Hello everyone, my name is Chris Mitchell. I want to bring to you today a study of Psalms 23, particularly Psalms 23 verse 6. In the Hebrew it says, Vishavti bevet Adonai laorik yamim, or Vishavti bevet Yahweh laorik yamim. That would be, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever, or I will dwell in the house of Yahweh forever. And we're going to talk about the different translations that exist between the Greeks and the Hebrews, and how these two translations actually mean the same thing, and how they pertain to the Messiah, and how they pertain to our hope in the resurrection from the dead. So with that, let me remind you, if you have not already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, so getting started here, I want to talk about Psalms 23. We'll read the whole thing starting out of the New King James Version. And I'm using the New King James Version for a reason. This particular Bible here has some footnotes that I think will be very helpful in getting us started very well. This is a Psalm of David, the Lord, that is the capital L-O-R-D. And if you've looked at my other videos, you know that is Yod-He-Vav-He. That is Yahweh. Yahweh is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so here we see the word dwell, and there's a footnote beside it. And so in the King James Bible, we look at the footnote and we say, hey, what is this about the word dwell? And we find out that the Septuagint, the Syriac, the Targum, and the Vulgate all say dwell, but the Masoretic text reads return. Does this mean there's something wrong with the scripture? Actually, it does not. And let me explain to you why. The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Bible. This was the Greek Bible, okay? Greek scriptures. The scriptures are translated to many different languages. The Syriac, the Christians were first called Christians in Antioch. Antioch was in Syria, so many translations were happening there, translations of the Old Testament. And so the translations of the Old Testament in Syria and in that tongue were also said dwell. The Targum, or the ancient commentaries of the Jews, also said dwell. And the Roman Bible, or the Latin Bible, which is called the Vulgate, also says dwell. The only one that doesn't say dwell is the actual Hebrew text, the Masoretic text. And so a lot of people will want to say, well, this is proof that the Masoretes may have changed this text. Well, I don't want to take that position. I want to take the position that basically says, you know what? God has preserved his word. And let's think about this just for a minute. Let's say I were to go on vacation and I were to return to my house and I was tired from vacation. Would I stand outside, or would I come in, sit down in my easy chair, turn on the television, or maybe get out my Bible, or whatever it is I do, and sit and dwell? And when we think about Ezekiel chapter 38, or not chapter 38, but just as Ezekiel, when Ezekiel's talking about the departure of the presence of the Lord from the temple, when he sees the presence of the Lord depart from the temple, what happens when the presence of the Lord returns to the temple? So, is God going to return to the temple and not dwell on the temple? Now think for a minute about David. What did David do here? David wrote this psalm, and David was a prophet. David said that he would dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Was there such thing as a house of the Lord in David's time? David had a tent for the Lord. And King Solomon was going to build a house for the Lord. So David was looking for this time when he was going to be resurrected and taken into this place where he would be with God forever. The patriarchs also had this hope. We learn about it in Hebrews chapter 11, where it says that they dwelt in tents. They were looking for a city whose builder and maker is God. Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 tells us that we are looking for the physical resurrection of the body, and that Jesus Christ physically rose from the dead, and that we too will physically rise from the dead. Jesus, as the Messiah, will return to this earth. He will set up his millennial reign, and we will be with him. It says in Isaiah chapter 12 that great will be the Holy One of Israel in our midst. Okay, real quickly, I want to talk about Psalms 23 and Bible Hub. So this is BibleHub.com, and this is the Interlinear Bible. And right here is where verse 6 would begin. And it says, Veshavti bevet Yahweh le'orek yamim. And this is where the controversy lies. There's actually a little bit of a controversy here because this means le'orik. Orik means length, and you can look this up in your Strong's Concordance. And this literally means length. And this orik means length for other animate objects in the Bible. So whose length are we talking about? Are we talking about Messiah's length, who lives forever? When we are raised to everlasting life, is it our everlasting life length? So if that's the case, then it's properly translated forever. Ode is how the Hebrews will say forever. And if you see a sentence ending in, well, I should say ode, odd, I think is the vocalization for that. And olam is another word that they use for forever. But that's a study for another day. But this particular word here, Veshavti, I want to show you this. Let me blow this up here. This, and I will dwell. It's Vav, Shin, Bet, Tav, and Yod. In between this Vav and the Shav should be a Yod for I will dwell. I want you to pay close attention to this number, 3427, because this 3427 is pointing to the wrong word. When I was taught this originally, this particular psalm, I was told that David did something very unusual here when he said, I will dwell. If I were speaking to English speakers, I would say this differently. I would say he misspelled the word. Now, I know that's a little harsh, but David really didn't misspell the word. This means returned, and I'm going to show you why it means return. Sometimes you can't trust what is written in English down here below. You learn the Hebrew, and you understand what the Hebrew says, and the English doesn't necessarily follow the Hebrew. And sometimes the numbers don't follow the Hebrew, and I'm going to show you how that doesn't necessarily agree either. And so it's very good to get a handle on the language as you're studying it. So here's this word 3427, and it's Yod, Shin, Vav. Now, there are times when Yod will disappear in Hebrew. I understand that. But for this particular purpose, it should not disappear. The word should be Yeshavti. Vayeshavti would be, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord. This says, I will return. And here's the proof of I will return to the house of the Lord. Here is Jacob in Genesis 28 after he sees the ladder that's ascending into heaven and Yahweh visits him. After this visit, he pours oil on this place where he was laying, and he calls it the house of God. And he says, if you will return me here, if you will return me to this house of the Lord, if you will return me back safely, and you'll keep me clothed with and keep me fed, then I'll give you a tenth of everything that I own. And here it is right here, Vashavti. Now remember the numbers that I gave you on the last word for Vashavti. Here's Vashavti. And now we have different numbers. This number was 7725. I think the other one was 3427. It was in the 3000s, but this is 7725. So this is Vashavti, so that I return again. Notice that this is a different word. This is not Yeshav, for I sit or I dwell. This is Shuv, which means return. So here, even Jacob is looking at this time when God will return him to the house of God. David looking for that time where he will be returned to the house of God, that house which hasn't even been built yet. David prophesying about the Messiah who would return to the house of God. We know that he is seated at the right hand of God the Father in the heavenly tabernacle, and he is making intercession for us right now. So he is returned into that which is heavenly. But there remains the prophecy to be fulfilled that Messiah will return to the earth and set up his millennial reign here on the earth. And not only will he return to the house of the Lord, but as the scholars from long ago, even the Jewish scholars, they recognize that not only will the presence of God return to the house of Yahweh, but the presence of God will dwell in the house of Yahweh. And not only will Jesus Christ raise up us from the dead on the last day, but he's going to raise up Daniel just as he promised. Because he said to Daniel, Daniel, go your way, for you will rise to your inheritance. And he said to Ezekiel, will these dry bones live? And Ezekiel said, Lord, you know. And Ezekiel saw the dry bones come to life, saw the flesh come on the bones. We don't know how all these things are going to happen, but Yahweh, God, knows how all these things are going to happen. And again, as it says in Isaiah chapter 12, great will be the Holy One of Israel in our midst. So I hope you've enjoyed this study today, and know that we will return, or the Messiah will return, and so therefore we will return. We have the same promise as the patriarchs, as it says in Hebrews chapter 11, that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they dwelt in tents, and they looked for the city whose builder and maker was God. And is that not what we're looking for? Are we not looking for the Messiah to return? So cling to the Messiah today. Cling to Jesus Christ. Admit that you're a sinner. Turn from your sins and get into his word and follow his word. Thank you for listening to today, and I hope you have a good day.